Okay, next we're going to talk about academic level, the relationship between IEP goals and achievement of grade level standards-based benchmarks through the general curriculum. I mentioned in an earlier slide about the need to monitor student development over the period of a year, especially for kids who aren't found eligible for special ed services. This is the expectation period, or more than a year's growth in a year's time. We must set high expectations for our kids. Many individuals from the deaf community don't consider themselves as having a disability. It's the lack of meaningful access is really what causes developmental delay, not the hearing levels. Meaning if a deaf or hard of hearing child has access to language and communication in the birth to 3 years, they have a much better potential to reach developmental milestones. This is evident in research done on children who have deaf parents or deaf of deaf. Parental involvement depends a lot on the parent-to-teacher relationship. A plan should be set up early in the school year for parent-teacher communication, whether using a communication log, probably more currently emails or texting. There's also some really great classroom teacher apps like Kaymbu, K-A-Y-M-B-U, that allow parents to see pictures of their kids and actions in the classroom, what skills they're working on, how it relates to IEP goals, and can show progress charts too. Plus, it can also create student portfolios that are tied into developmental levels and shared as a report with parents and others on the IEP team. More and more parents are asking for support, as teachers are not the only teachers in a child's life. Parents are the primary role models and life teachers for their children, whether they realize that or not. Social emotional learning, or SEL, and mental health have become hot topics in early childhood and general education for good reason. Stress and emotional life experiences can be tiring and distract from learning and attending for any child, and for deaf, hard of hearing kids who are working extra hard to focus their brains on listening through classroom background noise and or focusing on an interpreter throughout the school day can take its toll on academics as well as social emotional development. We also need to consider students who are deaf, hard of hearing, and have additional learning differences or secondary conditions, including students who are more complex or deaf plus. We need to be very cautionary with the idea of placing students in developmentally delayed classrooms. Again, I'm coming with my preschool lens. Sure, this may be an appropriate placement for a select few, but we need to be sure that even the deaf plus kids and deaf hard of hearing students have access to their deaf and hard of hearing peers. Carol had mentioned that too. The effectiveness of a student's communication mode in providing access to direct instruction can sometimes lead into conversations of staff fluency and knowledge of communication modality. And this goes for all, including students who are using listening and spoken language. Does the student have access to a teacher of the deaf or a deaf ed specialist, meaning an SLP, educational audiologist, school psychologist, or school counselor? We strive to have teams who have these specialists sitting at the table. Again, so much is tied to communication and access. We need to ensure students are actually making advances in developmental skills and academic learning. Supporting strategies like pre-teach, teach, and reteach methods, yes. Considering school placement in context to academic level and communication needs, this is a big one for all grade levels. Again, with my early childhood world, preschool placement comes up a lot. These conversations can go back and forth. Again, a good reason to have a deaf ed specialist on your team, as well as for ensuring academic goals are measurable and objective and not based solely on teacher observation. Ask any SLP or itinerant teacher of the deaf. Scheduling related services can be like a puzzle, but not an excuse to not provide the services. And identifying the student's optimal learning environment once again, going back to the individual's access and modalities in different school environments. For instance, the classroom setting versus PE, considering both auditory and visual access. There is a lot of focus on auditory access, which is definitely important for students whose main access is listening and spoken language, but it's also very important to look at visual access. Preschool classrooms can be very busy with centers, bookshelves, other furniture, visually busy rugs, even if they're cute, can be distracting to a visual learner. Classroom setups need to be visually friendly too.